is a clinical neuropsychologist, one of the brightest individuals I have ever met. And honestly, I act like a kid in a candy store when I get a chance to talk to him at work. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I have honestly, I'm really happy I get a chance to talk to you online. It's every time I get a chance to listen to you talk, it's like, I'm learning something. You definitely speak like an educator, and you say it in a very easy and comprehensible language.
That's critical. Okay. Well, I'm glad to be here because you're doing something really great here with this podcast. So thanks.
Thank you. So,
By the way, I have allergies. If I cough, wait me out. If I keel over, you're free to go.
sounds good. I'll send somebody in there to go pump your arm. So, Dr. Grimmel, what got you into becoming a psychologist?
Well, it started with my own involvement in psychotherapy, which was in two bouts. 6 months in Minneapolis with a guy at a kind of a walk in center. And then 2 years through in clinical pastoral counseling with a Lutheran pastor in Denver, centered around the fact that life seemed to be going well on the outside, but was not producing happiness on the inside. And I now call that a McLife. Apologies to the good people at McDonald's, but your life looks good when it's on the hanger, but when you put it on, it just is not fitting in some critical way. So that was the start, and I enjoyed reading more and learning more on this topic. And then I was in Washington Park in Denver reading a really insightful book titled The Neurotic Personality of Our Time. And I looked up to take a breath, and an obviously anorexic woman was running past me. That came across to me as a call to action, a spiritual call. So I registered for a psychology program the next day.
Why did you choose to go for neuropsychology?
I didn't. I'm a generalist.
My apologies.
Um, that's fine. I do not fit the common categories well. Um, I went into clinical psychology because that's about working with genuine mental illness. And after about 2 years of graduate work, I was getting really hungry for concrete facts and data. And we had a neuropsych program, so I started taking classes there to scratch the hard science itch while also learning how to work with people, which was my goal. And I kind of ended up doing a little bit of everything, except ironically enough, eating disorders. I've never treated that.
Hmm.
So go figure.
So, where was your first place of employment after you got done becoming a psychologist?
Um, we had I went to Nebraska, a program I can recommend. The program was entirely self funded, even though it was with the University of Nebraska. All of the program was paid for by community agencies that hired our master's level people on to do clinical work. And the last thing I did there was a dual diagnosis program. They worked with substance abusing mental health patients, mostly homeless or at risk of that. When I went on internship, they created a position, a psychologist position for the first time, and held it open for me. So I just stepped into that. That was very interesting work because that's as far as you can get from the classic worried well. They're people who are barely clinging to a position in society because of combined mental health and substance abuse issues. So that was my first job.
What do you think the commonality, or what do you think the causality of people having substance abuse issues?
Boy, is that a deep question. Okay, that's what I think. I was at this place for 7 months and was in my office observing myself because I could tell I'm showing signs of clinical depression. And I knew why. It was because nothing we did worked. So I called the clinical director, terrific guy, and he came down and I said to him, nothing we do works. And he said, I know. What do you want to do about that? So I said, give me 2 weeks off, and I'm going to go to the university library and read up and look for what we're missing. So I came back 2 weeks later in a very happy mood. I had confirmed that nothing works. So that meant we could throw all that away and think about what question have we not asked. And I came up with 3 possible perspectives. I remember 2 of them. I don't remember the other one. One of them was to think of substance abuse as a form of abusive attachment disorder, where your substance is your attachment figure. It's what calms you down when you're distressed, but it also abuses you by wrecking your life. But the other one was to think of substance abuse as an emotion phobia. So if you're afraid of snakes, you can avoid snakes. Or if you're afraid of heights, as I was in my youth, you can avoid heights. But if what triggers panic in you is your own experience of an emotion, what do? How do you escape that? Well, one way is drug it. So I talked to the clinic director and he said, sounds good, develop the program. So I did, and we piloted it for a couple of years before he left, and then I left for unrelated reasons. But basically, when I look back, my whole career has, in one way or another, touched on this topic of emotion phobia. That if you can experience your emotions as they are, read them the way you read the indicators on your dashboard, and know what to do because of them, you aren't going to be abusing substances. You're not going to be getting into crime. You will live a productive life. So I think it comes down to the inability to live with feelings.
So that leads into another question about, if I remember correctly, men are more likely to abuse substances. And is that a reason because of the emotion phobia, or why do you feel that way?
I think there's a connection. I got into grad school by publishing my own original research. They said that's the best way to get in, so I did it. My topic was on gender roles and psychological well-being. And my question as an undergrad, again, I had a fantastic faculty advisor because he basically said, go figure it out. My question was, why should gender roles have anything to do with your psychological health? What's the connection? And I came up with 3 ways that gender roles can influence your well-being. Number 1 is they can encourage you or require you to do things that are intrinsically unhealthy. And example number 1 is risk-taking behavior. Number 2, they can discourage you from doing something that's actually necessary for your health. And in men, that's recognize, express, and learn how to manage emotions with skill. And number three, that didn't work out, but you get my point. Number three is people go through a continuous self comparison to their gender role ideal. And if you see yourself as not measuring up, that's intrinsically painful.
Hmm.
I've seen some research since then that it also tends to get reinforced by bullying in junior high and high school. That big surprise. So, so I think in particular, the male role model is stoic and achievement oriented. It's kind of funny to me that the male role model, gendered role model, doesn't have to do with play. I mean, you can ask yourself, I used to do this in classes. I'm going to describe a man and I'll stop and then you fill in everything that comes to mind to finish the picture. Okay, here we go. This man is successful. What comes to mind?
White collar.
Income bracket?
Yep. Higher level income bracket.
What kind of car does he drive?
He drives actually like a sedan, 4-door sedan.
Okay. One of the most successful men I know is the father of the rock band, the Three Sisters, The Warning. Look him up. He was an audio engineer and his wife was a dentist. They've both quit their jobs to promote their daughter's career. He has 3 daughters and a wife who like to be around him, and they tease each other. Why isn't that the definition of male success?
It's because, and this is just my perspective on this, we have romanticized these areas of numbers, quantifying it. When I think about, when you were talking about male success, I was thinking about a previous man that I used to know and how he took care of his daughter and his wife. And it was,
Yeah.
he would wear the clothes until that his wife threw away his clothes. He made sure that his family was always taken care of. And his daughter absolutely adored him.
Mm-hmm. Does a successful man play with his kids?
In my version of success, it would be yes. But
Absolutely.
in a lot
But
of,
that's not what the culture pushes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that creates an emotional dissonance, not a cognitive one, where you feel less than if you're not pushing for the next promotion at work because you actually enjoy your family.
Hmm.
So you're supposed to be stoic. Don't recognize that you have emotions. If you do, consider it being rude, like, you don't fart at the dinner table. Don't express an emotion. That's rude. And if you have them, whatever you do, don't pay attention to them. Don't learn how to manage them. Here, have a Jack Daniels. Yeah. So I think that's somewhere deep into why substance abuse is more common in men. Incidentally, when I think back to the place I worked, the female clients also had high levels of emotion phobias. It wasn't the same mechanism, but it was there.
So this is something I've been pondering on. Do you believe, or you're actually I'm curious about your perspective on this? Do you think that the emotional, I don't say phobia in men, but it was not that they were, no, taught would be the wrong word, but role modeled by a masculine role model, and it creates this kind of this like dissociation between it, where like they can read it in the book, but since they haven't had somebody that was able to, again, like I say, show them, Is that also some of the stuck points?
I think so. If you take the long view, um, the current male role model in our culture is not the one that used to be there. Um, the formative events, Abe Lincoln could wrestle, but he could also talk, make jokes, relax. Washington at Valley Forge wept in front of his troops. How would that go over now? Um, one of my friends in a former town was a Pacific War Marine Corps veteran. And you probably have some sense of what that means he went through. Um, he said when they got back to town after World War II, the World War I guys took him out and said, look, give the nightmares 5 years. So we had a cadre of men who went to World War I, which was very unpleasant. And then we had basically 1/3 of the adult male population go to World War II. And they came back being welcomed as heroes. So a lot of the negatives of PTSD were not present. But that entire generation was traumatized. My father, he was at Pearl Harbor and was in for the duration. All of our dads were in the war. It's like the Billy Joel song, Allentown. They could not connect emotionally, and they couldn't tolerate noise. So if you've ever heard boomers like me talking about how, wow, we used to play outside all the time. We'd be out for 8 hours and nobody was helicopter parenting us. We were out of the house because our dads couldn't tolerate noise. So we had to be out of the house. It wasn't pitched that way, but that was cause and effect. Because if mom was home, you could play indoors. When dad came home, take it outside. He can't take the noise and the unpredictability of boisterous kids. So somewhere from 1900 to 1970, our male gender role model switched. And I think it turned into a man's job is to create Leave It to Beaver's home. Big house, kids are well dressed. There are no problems that can't be solved in 20 minutes. And it's intrinsically move into a myth and make it work. And that doesn't work. So I think I almost touched on your question, but hey, we're having fun here.
We are, because when you were talking, there was another area that I asked this guy this question at one of my veteran coffee socials, and he said to me, "It was I have a hard time with my family, and especially with these topics about PTSD." And I asked him because he's been in he's been working on his mental health for a while. I asked him, "Is it because you do not know how to use the words to communicate what you need? Is it because you don't know how to be able to label what is going on? Is it the vulnerability aspect?" And when I was hearing what you were saying of the boomer generation of you play outside, dad doesn't want to deal with the noise, or it's kind of avoiding it. And it goes back almost very similar to the substances of this is causing an emotional arousal. That's what I'm hearing. And maybe I'm wrong. But to be able to explain to a young kid or a person saying, hey, I have this and it's because of this. And I want to shield you from this. and it's become almost like a oversimplification of dealing with a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. The war's over. Why aren't you happy? Yeah. That's insane. If the war's over, is your leg supposed to grow back? Do we understand that? Why not understand that I've seen things I can't unsee? And like the guy I talked about earlier, I've done things I can't undo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so can we accept not the fantasy, but the reality of surviving things like that?
So there's a couple things that I have learned in my 19 years of dealing with my own PTSD. One was the original thought. I don't want somebody else to deal with the same things I dealt with. I volunteered to go back for my second tour because I didn't want somebody to see what I saw and do what I did.
Wow.
The second thing was thou shalt not kill. Grew up, or I grew up in America, where our morality is heavily based off of Christian values,
Mhm.
or Christian values, I don't do quote unquote. And how would I be able to tell somebody any of my perspectives? Because will I be judged? Will I be
Yeah.
judged for everything else? And it's a stuck point. The third was, what do they gain from me sharing my story with them? And a lot of this stuff was a distorted sense. And what has actually come to my understanding of moving forward with my life and being able to work at the VA for the last 3 years and being out of the hospital for the last almost like 3.5 years, actually, no, 4.5 years. It's when we are sharing our stories and we're able to explain the emotion, it's not for the secondary game of the ooh and ah,
No.
but it's also given life to the person that we have been depriving because we are trying to cut themselves off.
I like what you're saying. I mean, that's helpful. I used to do couples therapy and enjoyed the heck out of it. But um, one of the reactions of men with PTSD is we don't talk about that with our family. Um, but a healthy relationship is about creating the feel that we are in a home together with no internal walls. The walls are between us and the rest of the world, and you're putting up a wall inside your own house. Um, it's really powerful when men can tell their partner what it is that they're stuck on. And it's no longer a secret. Um, it's no longer something you conceal, and it isn't something you bring up very often either. But it creates this sense of I don't talk about this stuff with anybody except you. You're different. We're a team.
The team becomes with this trust, and the trust
Yeah.
becomes with vulnerability. Um, Brene Brown says that vulnerability there's no courage without vulnerability, and I'm paraphrasing her right now.
Yeah.
When I look at it, and this is why, and this is how I try to share it with people, it's not just to tell them to romanticize everything, but when you're waking up and you're choking your partner, or you have now hurt your partner from flailing in the middle of the night, you could do how I did when it first happened to me, was try to be like a dog and try to cover it up like a dog. If he poops on a rug, trying to put something over
Yeah.
it, it's still
Yeah.
there. It's still going to stink, and if anything, it's going to create this mound. But having a person that understands, that loves you, and you're showing up with them, hey, this is some of the stuck points. These are some of the areas that I realize I've been stressed out. April 8th was actually a huge stuck point for me. And then I wanted to take away the power by doing new things and living outside my comfort zone around that day. So I could live
Mm.
for a buddy that no longer lives. But the the reframing of how our emotions are is hard,
Yeah.
especially when it was not role modeled. Like my grandfather being World War II, my dad being Vietnam, my great
Hmm.
grandfather being World War One. It's people like to say it's a toxic. I say it's the oversimplification of trying to get the quickest compliance and moving away from an area to be able to shut it off, and then creating more and more of a bubble around it so you can't get to the
Yeah.
nucleus.
Yep. Yeah, our bodies do that. They put a cyst around something, but that's an infection, and you're not healthy until you can drain it. So, yeah,
So I know that you worked in the prison systems for a bit. Is that correct?
I did.
What drew you to the prison systems?
I was working in my first ever neuropsychology, straight neuropsych job, and I hated it and would take anything to get out. And a prison job opened up. And it just so happened to be a great job. It was tremendous, very fulfilling. And it was entirely devoted to programming to teach convicted felons how to not come back to prison. So it was a lucky accident. Um, when you get what you want, you get what you want, and then you find out, oh, I really don't want that. Most of the best things I think you find by accident. That was the case for me. But that was really fascinating. And then later, so I did a little over 2 years in Nebraska, and then 3 more in Kansas evaluating sex offenders. And mostly, there are some impressions that came out of that. Mostly, the guys made me feel sad. There's an enormous absence of fathers in their lives. There's an extremely high rate of learning disability. Um, Mostly, I got the impression these are the people who drew the short straw in the game of life. They were set up very poorly to succeed, and they didn't get lucky enough to pull out of it, and ended up in our, whatever you want to call the system. I can't come up with a good euphemism. And we put them into locked facilities with about 5% pure evil. Um, and we wonder why that doesn't work. So, yeah, it's sobering. There's a group of people that can really use assistance.
One of the So there was a woman, she was canvassing for her campaign about, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago. And it was
Mhm.
for here in Billings, Montana. And she was like, I want to make it safer. And I said, okay, let me hear why. And I'm like, if you're going to canvas for yourself, I don't care what party you're in. I'm going to take the time out and listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was saying, I'm going to hire police and judges. And I said, that is putting a band aid on a problem. And she
Yeah.
said, what do you mean? I said, well, we have a lot of homeless. We got people coming out of jails and prison over here. What kind of jobs are we creating for them to get from here into a lower social blue collar job where they could be able to make some money, have some type of responsibility, have some type of purpose to be able to move forward? Like, what about a postal box or a public showers? And when I was looking at her face, it was like, oh, you don't want a quick fix. No,
Yeah.
I want to fix. I want to
Yeah.
fix, but I don't want it to be where it's just broken and it's a plastic society. And the reason I bring that up is because you're coming out of prison, or you're coming out of jail, you have large absentee fathers, you have higher rates of substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now do you got a strike behind your back? How are you supposed to not reoffend
Yeah.
when you have the deck stacked up against you even more than what you were born into?
Yeah. And we also have to include in that the essentially complete abandonment of the severe persistent mentally ill. So, when I was in the Nebraska prison system, we had a problem. One of our guys in the mental health unit that I supervised, uh, very much schizophrenic, was going to discharge his sentence, and he would then be shipped back to his home state of Michigan. So I was calling Michigan. They had no state hospital system at all. They had completely closed it. So they could, I guess, give away tax cuts. Talk about penny wise and pound foolish. So, how do you want to spend your money to deal with the homeless? Because you're going to. You can do it stupid or you can do it smart. Smart's going to take work. So, yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell in his book, I think it was called The Tipping Point, in this one, where he was talking about there is a homeless guy that's causing the taxpayers about $1 million a year between him going in and out of hospitals, substance abuse, them housing him, breaking stuff. It's and then this actually comes into the play of it has a very similar thing to me where how do we help people become empathetic to a
Mm-hmm.
person that is emotionally and mentally stuck instead of playing hot potato and saying, what is a system that we can be able to hit that has like a 75 to 80% success? And if
Yeah.
we, instead of actually having that overflow that they keep throwing thousands of millions of dollars just for that 1% or 2% increase, how are we able to now hit this and help people out?
Yeah. When I was in Nebraska at the Substance Abuse Center, the clinical director, who I admired and tried to imitate, got to go to a meeting with the county, the state hospital that, the mucky mucks.
Mm-hmm.
Topic of the meeting was the frequent flyers. And they had a list of 12 people who were high users of the system, each costing that $1 million a year. And they wanted to come up with a strategy of what to do about them. So my mentor said to the meeting, well, I think back 5 years when I was in a previous meeting on this same topic. And we had 12 people who were heavy users of the system. And now I have your list of 12 people. And what I know is that from the old list, 10 of the 12 have died. So it appears that our default strategy is to pretend to help while we let them die. So I appreciate his willingness to say true things to people who don't want to hear them.
And now this actually goes into, is it because we're deciding to be lazy instead of fixing a problem? Is it because we're not able to break it down to communication levels to help a person see that they have the possibility of change? And it these are the questions that comes up to my head, and I don't expect the answers to ever be there, besides like something to percolate in the background.
Mhm.
Because as the role of that I will be ending, which will be on Wednesday of next week with the VA,
Yeah.
is how do I have a chance to role model these people? How do I actually help agitate these individuals to see that there has a possibility of not needing to be stuck there? Because
Unfortunately, this is a group of people who live in a particular society. Have they ever had 2 years in a row where long term plans worked? If not, they're going to go for what works today.
yes,
And that's not their fault. That's the way people work. Don't we know that by now? So have we created an environment where they have a long-term strategy for success that they can feel? I was thinking about a book by Bill Bryson, Notes from a Small Island. He's a travel writer. His wife is English. He went over there and got a job at basically the National Mental Hospital. It was a huge, sprawling facility out in the country. His first day on the job, he went to the unit and it was empty. And he said, and so he was terrified. The inmates have escaped. So he called somebody, and the person said, "Oh, they're in town." So he went to town, and every day they would release all the inmates of this mental hospital. They would go to the town and they would drink coffee and smoke cigarettes and have conversations with lampposts and whatever it is that they were going to do. And the townspeople knew this and could handle it. We don't react that way. Our culture is about carpeting the world instead of putting on shoes. So if there's a person shouting on the bus and then they get off, where's the 4 alarm fire here? Why are we so afraid? So it's one thing to work. It's one thing to work with the symptom, but part of what this podcast is doing is also working on the symptom surrounding. We can all learn how to build space for people who are not good at managing life in this society. One of my grad school mentors said that it's very common that people with severe persistent mental illness do quite well in small towns. I was in a town of 200 when I was going to grad school, and there was a guy who had been quite successful till he had a severe brain injury and could now walk and talk and all that, but he had no self-control. So everybody in town knew who he was and could respond surround him with a bubble so that his inability to self regulate did not cause harm to him or to others. I remember talking to one old guy, how, because I was new to town. How do you manage this guy? How do you deal with it when he comes into the cafe for morning coffee? All the farmers are there. And he said, well, actually, I found that if you, I forget the word he used, but it's like what we would call about redirecting. He said, if you redirect him firmly, you can actually get a pretty good conversation out of him.
Hmm.
So in cities, no, you call the manager and ask for this guy to be removed. So again, where does the problem live?
Man, I'm just thinking quite a bit right now. The comment that you said before, we want to carpet the world so we don't have to wear, or otherwise we can wear shoes. And then
Mm-hmm.
talking about people with the mental illness, where you're meeting them where they're at
Yeah.
and not trying to remove them from the situation. It humanizes them. And it just, I never looked at it like that before. And
Mm.
that's why I'm actually taking it in while you were talking.
Okay. I bet you've had that experience, though. One of the benefits of my first job working with a severely impaired group is finding out they're not that bad. They can actually be pretty normal. Most of them, and even the schizophrenic guy with Tourette's, you can take him out into town and you can, go bowling. He's not that different. Our flinch reaction is because we're trying to create the leave it to beaver world, as opposed to learning how to live in the world we're actually in, which is not that hard. It's certainly less hard than trying to carpet the world. So I'm sure that in your work, you've had enough encounters with people who are at the extremes that you've found out it's actually not that bad.
I remember this one person I was working, or actually, I stumbled upon is the better way to say it. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm here right now. Cool. Let me actually hear what's going on. What are your thoughts? And when they did not get the reaction of me pulling away, they didn't get the reaction of me saying, hey, we're done here. It it changed the relationship very quickly. And they just seemed, I don't want to say settled down, but they kind of settled in. And it
Mhm.
was like, well, I guess I'm not going to scare this person. I'm not about to be rejected. I don't know what to do right now. And it becomes okay and manageable.
Yeah. And doesn't it feel good? Like you can cut through the pre-designated roles and have a real interaction with another real person.
Hmm. And whew, so I'm going to change up the subject a little bit. And this
Okay.
was one of the questions I was asking you before we jumped on was, what are some of the commonalities of issues with men with poor communication skills and what to actually notice? And it's your perspective. It's not the DSM-5 or
If you ever encounter someone who's less likely to quote the DSM, let me know who he is. Um, Probably the deepest one that I can come up with right now is relates to carpeting the world. It's the externalizing of blame. Um, Whatever distress I'm feeling, is caused by something out there, and I need to find a way to fix that or remove it, and then I'll be happy. I know one person who is trying to make that work. And again, in the McLife sense, externally, everything is a okay. It's an enviable life. Internally, he is very unhappy. And it's because the problems aren't outside. You can't fix them there. They're inside. Turn around, find out what it is about you that has you unhappy, and repair it there. It's faster, it's easier, and it's infinitely more effective. So, the externalizing of blame for distress is one of the common factors.
With a person to be able to sit inside that discomfort and figure it out, what is one of the first steps of recognition to be able to take ownership over it?
Um, well, we're specifically talking about Americans, and Churchill said that you can always count on Americans to do what's right once they've exhausted the alternatives. So I think for most men, you have to hit a break point where you throw up your hands and you say, this isn't working.
Hmm.
And that's really got a lot of pain. It's got a lot of despair to it, aspects of hopelessness. And if you can, it helps if you have somebody around, particularly a counselor. The point of a counselor is not just their training, but it's also that you have no other relationship with them. They don't have another dog in the fight but your well being. And if you can find one, um, stop trying to fix that feeling, sit with it, wait. And if you can be patient with it, you begin to find what's under the mythology you've been trying to, the carpeting you've tried to put on the world. And I mean, I remember in my 20s being in an apartment and just tossing out words and then listening to myself asking, is that the name for this? Is that what this feeling is? Is that what it is? And there comes a moment where you hit it and it's like a little bell and the feeling changes. It's really cool. You can change a feeling just by accurately naming it.
Hmm.
And then start trying things. What you've been doing, it's kind of like what happened at my first professional job. What you've been doing doesn't work. What have you never tried? Start trying new things and observe yourself and listen to yourself. So the straight-jacketed role model of what a man's supposed to be in our culture. I mean, on that list of features, isn't like number 4 or number 5 to be independent? Okay. So doesn't that mean throw out the gender role model and find out what you actually like?
So that has been one of the conversations that I've had time and time again. I don't even know what I like. What do I enjoy? And I'm not just talking about for me. I remember when I was stuck there. I'm talking about from many conversations of I don't even know what I enjoy. I don't
Yeah.
know, and the fear in a person's like brain of trying something to break that unknowing of. I tell people I read this book by Ryan Leake. It's called Chasing Failure, and I said to him, I said the book which talks about getting closer and closer to other areas. And I said, this is not a mental health book. It is just a book about helping you realize that if you want to enjoy something or if you want to get closer to something, fail at it numerous times.
Yes.
And something I've told people too is like, hey, I grew up in lower social economics. Symphony was not my thing.
Mhm.
I didn't think that was ever going to be in it. And I fell in love with Billings Symphony. And I fell in love with the jazz part of it, or actually the Susskind series part of it, which they actually have Rocky
Yes.
Mountain Jazz that do it.
Yeah.
And what I say is like, hey, try it, fail at it. I said, you're going to survive it at first. You're going to not really have the emotions to
Yeah.
be able or wherewithal. You're just going to be existing, cringing to get through it. The more that you're able to participate in other areas, you have that friction and reduces the friction each time, and it doesn't feel as much like sandpaper, and it'll start to feel smooth.
Yeah.
And by learning
And
to trust, go ahead.
that's how you build, that's how you get out of a Mick life, an off the rack life, and tailor make it to yourself. Um, I don't know, you're in high school, you played whatever sport you played, you did whatever activity you did. My older brother was in the first group of boys in our high school who did home ec. And the administration did not want to let them, and they forced it. They said, we need to know how to cook. We need to know how to clean. We need to know how to put on a button on a shirt. We want to take this class. So they did. Um, it's only if you're following the strict role model, if you're lucky, you exactly fit those measurements. But if the vast majority of people, that's not who they truly are inside. The only way to tailor make your life to yourself is exactly that. Try things. Try different music, try different hobbies. Uh, the big popular TV show in my teen and early 20 years was Happy Days. I think you can still get it in reruns, and they had the Fonz. And Craig, how stereotypically male can you get? He's a high school dropout mechanic who rides a motorcycle and wears a leather jacket. I mean, come on. And he fights. But his nephew, he made his nephew confess what he actually like. I like flower stores. And his nephew's saying it's not cool. And Fonzie's message was, if you like it, it's cool. What's not cool is doing what everyone else thinks you ought to be doing. Find your path. Yeah, try things. You'll be able to tell in just a few tries whether it fits you. Another thing I'd add on to that is with music in particular, you got to listen to it 3 times because at first it's so alien, it's like it just bounces off. What did I hear? But on the third time, if it's something you really get into, you'll know. But another thing we can add on to that is pay attention to how you feel afterward. I think everybody or most people have met at least one person where you hang out with them, you talk, you BS. It seems like a really vibrant evening, and you go home and you're just exhausted. Okay, trust that feeling. Stay the hell away from them. Whatever you do, don't marry him. Don't take it from me. Take it from my brother. So yeah, pay attention to your own reaction afterwards. Are you tired? Or the next day, do you get up whistling and I think I'll clean the house today. I feel really good. Pay attention to that.
I think that's good for everybody. That's
Yes.
sound advice.
Yeah, one of the findings in my field, I think Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this somewhere or other. We do not have privileged access to our own internal states. So you can't look inside and discern what it is you like and what it is you dislike. And you actually can sort of tell when you're doing it. But the best way to tell, I mean, why did I go into psychology? Well, I was a computer software engineer and I wanted to get the heck out of that. Um, so I actually made a list of all the books I could remember ever reading, because reading is something I do, and then sorted them by category. Category one was fiction. And I thought, I don't think I have a career there. Category two was psychology. I was shocked. I had always thought of psychology as kind of a fluff field. And it wasn't until I actually looked at what I had spent my free time reading about that I realized, if I will read about this on my own time, maybe I'd enjoy it as a career. That's how you find what you like. You can't read it inside you. You have to look at yourself from the outside. When I have the time, what do I do? What do I turn to over and over? And it's been, I know, 33 years since I changed careers. And I'm not tired of people yet. So,
Do you see similarities within? Because I know you'll be retiring from the VA sooner than
mhm.
later, and we'll be losing a very valuable asset with you. Do you do you notice like similarities between how, or actually, do you see similarities between how people are mentally stuck, especially when you're doing the evaluations? I know it's a loaded question, and I would actually probably should phrase it a little bit differently.
I think I know what you're asking and I'm connecting to it, but go ahead and rephrase it.
The the individuals that are stuck, mentally and emotionally stuck, do they have similar stuck points of not being able to move forward or not being able to find that type of joy that you're speaking of?
Yes.
And what is the preventing causality or preventing situation?
Um, the book I mentioned, The Neurotic Personality of Our Time from the 1930s,
Hmm.
starts off with Karen Horney talking about her answer to the question, what's mental health? And she said, you can tell there's some kind of behavioral disorder from three things. One of them is that there's a failure to achieve potential. So this is someone who clearly is bright and all that and just kind of never gets on track. The second one is a marked degree of suffering that's out of step with their actual circumstances. So there's the depressed person whose outward life, whose life looks happy, but they're miserable. Okay, there's something going on there. But the third one goes to your question, it's rigidity. The hallmark of mental health is flexibility. We don't adapt to this planet by running 70 miles an hour or having claws or scampering up trees by, like gibbons can do, or by weighing 12,000 pounds or whatever. We adapt to this planet by being flexible. What other creature lives on all seven continents?
Hmm.
So, flexibility is critical. So, what stops you from doing something different? I think there's only one answer: fear. That was certainly true in prison. You will never find a group of people who are as frightened as inmates. They're
Hmm.
scared of everything, and their whole front is to try to put that fear into someone else so they can relax for a minute or two.
I've wondered, is it because we keep doing the same things over and over again because it's predictable? and familiar of the outcome and the consequences.
My reaction is I don't think so, because on the one hand, I've been working with people for a lot of years now, but on the other hand, I haven't worked with them in the same way. About every 5 years, I change up what I'm doing with people. So I've been through several different iterations of how I treat disorders. I'm on my 15th different layout of my neuropsych exam. When you do it over and over, you get bored. The only reason not to try something different is because you're afraid it might not work. Well, if it doesn't work, try something else. It's not like you're making a lifetime commitment to plan 3. One of the metaphors I used to tell people is General Grant took over the Union armies because he was the guy who took the city of Vicksburg. Okay, how do you take Vicksburg? Well, I can tell you 2 ways you don't. Plan A fails, Plan A fails again, Plan A fails again, Plan A fails again. That doesn't work. The second way to not take Vicksburg is Plan A fails, Plan B fails, it can't be done. How Grant did it was Plan A failed, Plan B failed, Plan C failed, Plan D failed, Plans E and F ran in parallel, they both failed, Plan G failed, Plan H took Vicksburg. That's the literal story of his campaign in Vicksburg. That's how you find a happy life. If it ain't working, drop it. Try anything else. If that also doesn't work, you will have learned something about the problem. Can you get to Plan H? Why not?
No, I appreciate that, because it's one of the things I tell people, and I think it's something similar, is do something that you enjoy suffering at, and do it to the point that you would like to continue to grow and change.
Yeah.
And taking as much information as you can. Some of the information you're not going to enjoy, let it go. If you do, actually, I'll tell you in the words of my old platoon sergeant. He said, and I remember asking him, I was like, hey, how is it to be an NCO? He told me, and this was bright eyed, bushy tail, Will Fruin, just pinned on corporal, just got back from doing like a 2-week operation over in Fallujah. And he was like, Fruin, like pretty much shut the F up. I haven't had my cup of coffee yet. Comes back later on, and he tells me, he said, if you see a leader that you like, you emulate them. If you don't see if you see a leader that you don't like, learn what they're doing and don't emulate it. Be true, and actually, people see through bullshit.
Yeah.
And Mike told me this, and it's something that has actually resonated with me. If you're willing, and that's something I've learned, is like, if I don't like this, cool. If I like it, great. If I want to grow and I want to suffer at it, absolutely amazing. Like, I'm turning 41 in 4 days, and it's I'm looking. I'm like, wow. I'm gonna start up. I'm gonna start my master's in social work. After this, I might go back to school for my PhD in psychology. So I want to do research. I want to understand why these patterns keep happening. And I'm like, is it just because we're oversimplifying it in the plastic society? And then the other thing is like this podcast, the most views I had in one short was like 3.4 thousand viewers. And other ones I've had 2. And that's cool. Like 2 people.
Yeah.
And my thing is, it's just like I read this book from Charles Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Since I don't have any kids, one of my conundrums was the immortality complex without even realizing it was there. And I read this book and it was talking about why people were willing to die for their mothers or for identical twins they're passionate on. And the way that I learned in not a very linear way. I learned from different perspectives and just taking in a lot of information all at once. And I'm like, when I die, I hope I help somebody move in the right direction at least once. And that's my immortality complex
Yeah.
of how can I help people change to be the best version of themselves.
Mhm.
And at 41 years old, I'm going to learn about social work because I want to learn about the grand schemes of how pretty much society influences people, looking at how policy does it, how do we be able to provide therapy. And the other part to it is then I wanted to get into more research based because, again, it's selfish of me because I want to agitate people to be better, to actually be more emotionally aware. And you
Mhm.
and I had this conversation about, like, some people will say you're trying, they'll say like you're trying to feminize masculinity. And no, it's trying to humanize masculinity. And
Yeah.
I have this hypothesis in my head, and I'm trying to see if I can prove it or not. Is that if more men are more emotionally understanding and they're able to process their emotions, would divorce go down? Would violence go down? Will suicide go down? And I'm at that point of that is my hypothesis. So this is something I'm willing to suffer for. So I want to convince other people to suffer for things that they want to prove to themselves or other people.
Well, I'm going to hang on to that phrase. Look for something you enjoy suffering at. That's a good one. Um, it's kind of ironic, but what I'm connecting up here within the field of unhealthy genders, one of the strong influences is the extreme gender role stereotyping that I see in conservative religious traditions. And their own tradition says that that's not right. And you can look at the last chapter of Proverbs in the Jewish Bible, the Christian Old Testament, and see a picture of that. If you want to know who's a successful farmer, you don't look at what they're wearing or what they're driving. You look at their farm. Is it growing? Is it well cared for? Is it tended? Are the buildings painted? That person is a successful farmer, not because of who they are, but because of what the farm is. And in the same way, how do you tell who is a successful partner, parent? Look at who they're married to. Look at their children. Are they flourishing? Are they trying things? Are they building things? Are they making life happen? The best way for a man to do that is you work your job, you come home, and now you support your wife, and then you support your kids. And if there's time free at the end of the day, that's gravy. But your job is to tend them. And this is what the Gottman School of Treatment has found. If you're not up for that, maybe you shouldn't get married, or you should find what it is about yourself that you can't give that to others. But I've seen successful men who are totally living that way. They like to spend time with their wife. They listen. They empathize. They don't try to problem solve so they can relax. They just understand. And if she needs help, she'll ask. But they've got a listening ear. The kids need help with their homework. I may have only gone to the eighth grade, but I'll sit down and wrestle with it with you because it's not about the answers to your homework. It's about us sharing the struggle. All of that hinges on emotional tolerance within yourself and intelligence with others.
Dr. Gramel, I want to say I really do appreciate your time. And I'm,
I'm glad I got to do this. I'm kind of sorry it's done.
well, it doesn't mean that this has to be the last one we do. We can always do another one. I um I wanted to ask, what message would you want to give to the listeners of pretty much just what message would you like to give to the listeners?
There is nothing to fear.
You know, you're going to be one of the people I'm going to miss at work, and I'm going to. But I got your personal number, so I can reach out to you.
Please do, especially when you hit grad school. If something seems not right, give me a call because it probably isn't.
So, did I tell you I start grad school actually in 1 month from now?
You did. Congratulations. Have fun.
I'm going to. I appreciate you, Dr. Grimel. Seriously, do. And I do mean it when I say that when I actually get a chance to see you at work, I do actually, I feel like a gigantic kid. I don't know if that radiates off enough. Like you came
Yeah,
in the, and I'm like, oh, this guy, I'm like, hopefully he doesn't avoid me too much, but you're a wealth of knowledge from theology to science fiction to nonfiction. It is a guy that is extremely well read around.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the compliment. The legacy I'd want to leave is that I could hold space with people who were in trouble.
Hmm. Well, thank you, Doc.
I'll see